Welcome to the Second Plan A podcast, where we dive deep into the art of navigating life's twists, turns, and sucker punches. I'm Amber Hoover. I'd rather stick to the plan.
And I am Ryan Hoover, and I like my plans like I like my woman.
I don't know what that means. Do I want to ask?
Nope.
So today we are moving on to our second plan A. You better not have a second plan woman. Shoot, that's what you meant, isn't it?
I said woman.
Woman, you did. Okay, all right. On this episode, stop it, we are putting the tools in our toolbox to work. The new year is a time that many people look at as a fresh start. It's often the one time of the year that they take some inventory of their life, and I'm betting they skip over a lot of the items that got shoved to the back. They probably have a whole Monica closet of stuff that is shameful. Are you ready to get into it?
Sure, let's do it.
Already taking notes. Love it. So I did a quick poll on our Fit to Fight Republic channel, since it has the bigger following, and I asked if people set New Year's resolutions. I was a little surprised by the breakdowns. You probably won't be. It was 20% yes, 70% no, and 10% maybe.
Any idea gender breakdown on that?
See, no, and I might be able to dig into those details. I don't really have a gender breakdown. I don't really have an age breakdown, so we'll be able to guess our way through it. And it was only a sample size of about 30 to 40 votes, somewhere in there. I just thought we'd have a larger number in the yes column, considering our audience primarily does a skill-based endeavor for a large part of their life. And so I thought, with clear progressions set for what they do as their hobbies, and some of them for their livelihood, I just thought we'd have a higher number yes. Pew Research in January 2024 showed 31% of those ages 30 to 49 say they made a resolution, and about 21% of adults 50 and older do so. Which, the way I asked it was different, and we have to, again, break down the qualifiers and the ages and that sort of thing. It's an imperfect medium for sure, but I just wanted to have a talking point. This isn't where I was going to start, but here we go. What are your thoughts on the gender breakdown?
I was just curious. I like my impulse kind of guess would be that women do it more than men.
I would assume so.
I mean, I could be totally wrong, and maybe it does vary by other types of demographics as well. But I would think women are probably more prone, inclined to do them. I mean, full disclosure, we're gonna, I guess, talk about resolutions.
A little bit.
I'm 50, and I have never in my life done a New Year's resolution.
I would have bet that.
Yeah.
I pretty much figured, and I thought about starting this with, okay, do we want to hate on resolutions to begin with or support them?
Yeah.
And I was like, no, let's start with some numbers before we jump into really what it looks like.
Yeah.
So I would have guessed that you'd never set a resolution. But what I'm not sure of is whether you are pro or anti New Year resolution. Plan or pass. Oh, right from the beginning.
Yeah, I'm not playing that game anymore.
Thanks to the one person who voted on our poll on Spotify. Much appreciated. Brandon on YouTube, thank you for giving me an answer.
Yeah, well, you need to look up the definition of game.
Boo.
Because they're supposed to be fun.
So anyway,
I don't know. I think it's one of those personal kind of things. If it works for you, then great. I don't have numbers to support this, but I would venture to say that the vast majority of people it doesn't work for.
Yes,
there's
the numbers say that.
Yeah, and it's it's akin to a lot of the other things that we've talked about. It's not enough to just say, all right, I'm going to lose weight this year. Like
right.
That's so just ambiguous and mushy and just and I think if done properly, right, and that's what I immediately started writing notes down was some things that I think people can do to maybe make them more successful than not. And then the other thing is even in the Hard Ready program, part of that is all right, for 30 days you're going to do something new or uncomfortable or whatever every day, and you write it down and you map it out, and there's a real intent behind it.
Yeah.
And it can be something as simple as write a short story, to draw a picture, to uh, go rock climbing, to take a jujitsu class, to cook a meal, whatever, things that you don't normally do in your life, but you're doing a new one every day. But it's something you can do relatively easily, even if it's not, simple for you in terms of, all right, well, cooking a meal is not something that I normally do. So I'm going to have to put some real time, energy, and effort in this. Okay. So make that
Right.
towards the end of your 30 days and you've got time to work through it. But there's intent behind it,
Yeah.
and it's a 1 day thing,
Right.
as opposed to, all right, well,
I have to do this every
this,
day
this,
for
yeah, this, whatever my resolution is, it's going to take me 6 months. Well, you better build some serious habits and create, some real actionable disciplinary kind of modalities to for that to have a chance at being successful.
right. And we're going to get into more of that a little
Yeah.
bit along the lines of why these resolutions fail, why people maybe have decided it's not even worth starting it. And then, of course, how we can counter those.
Yeah.
And it's going to come back to, I believe we talked about this a good bit in episodes 11, 12 on learned helplessness, trying some things on, seeing what fits for you. Because the way a new year resolution might work for one person isn't necessarily the way it's going to
Yeah.
work for you. And
Sure.
so we have to give allowance for the process, not just I'm going to lose 20 pounds in 4 months, ready, go.
Yeah.
You have to give some allowance to I'm going to build a habit that's going to allow me
Right.
to lose this weight and that sort of thing
And that's going to take you 60 days at least,
at the minimum.
to just creating that habit, for whatever it is. I mean, if it's 20 pounds, well, there's a lot that's going to go into that to do it properly. You're going to have to change maybe
You maybe just
the way
drink
you
one less
sleep, the
can
way
of
you
soda
eat,
a
the way,
day,
yeah,
but you could also have to, yeah.
your exercise routines, whatever. I mean, if you weigh 340 pounds, then you losing 20 pounds is going to be relatively easier than if you weigh 180 pounds and you want to lose 20 pounds.
Yeah. One of the big reasons I think resolutions fail, and there are plenty, but I think one of them is not giving not giving yourself an allowance that there's a process of working towards that. Because if you were going to do the things that you needed to lose the weight, to increase your bottom line in your business, to spend more time with your kids, you would do them.
Mhm.
Those types of things are relatively simple, and those would be probably poor goals. If you set a goal and you hit it every time in the time restrictions you give yourself, whatever it is, you're probably not challenging yourself enough.
Yeah.
But the bigger problem comes in when you think that manifesting that shit,
Yeah.
back to our magical thinking
Mhm.
from last episode,
Yeah.
is enough. Well, because I've said it, because the stats show I'm 80% more likely to meet it by writing it down, I'm going to
Right.
go ahead and write it down. And the reality is, okay, maybe that is true, but they weren't writing it down to just writing it down. They were writing it down to maybe plan out their
Yeah.
next week and then their next month and, really give allowance for the process.
Right. Yeah.
The planning,
Yeah.
just, I mean, literally why we exist right now.
Yeah.
It's the planning. And then letting go of the solid, it's got to be 20 pounds in 6 months, and realizing it might only be 12 pounds in 6 months. But that's a huge win
Right.
because
And
you have established.
yeah, if you've done the things that you needed to do, and you've created the habits, and you've built in the discipline that got you to lose the 12 pounds, then that should be viewed as a win. I think we have a tendency, and we see this in the Hard Ready program sometimes. We have a tendency to, well, it's the gap in the gain. We've talked about that a little bit.
Yes.
We have a tendency to be like, oh, but I've got 8 more pounds and no time left. Yeah, but you still lost 12 pounds. You lost more, than half. You're on the right track.
Yeah.
And I mean, realistically, if you just said I want to lose 20 pounds in 6 months, well, those are pretty arbitrary things.
Yeah.
There's no
People
there's
come
no
up and ask us all the time, what do you think? How many pounds do you think I should lose in this amount of time?
Right.
What's good? And it's like, I don't know you. I
Yeah.
don't know your life. Focus on the habits, the
Yeah.
process.
Yeah. I mean, I do think it's good to have specifics
Sure.
because that
Have
allows
a
you
target and
to plan properly. Uh, but also like with the understanding that all of these things are fluid.
yeah.
You know, um, if I said, all right, I want to add 20 pounds to my PR max on bench in the next 3 months, that would just be a number that I pulled out of my like.
Right.
There's I'm not comparing it to anything other than what I'm doing right now. I'm just saying I'd like to be able to push 20 more pounds. Okay, if in 3 months I'm pushing 15 more, I would be
Yeah.
looking at that as a gain, as
Yeah.
an improvement.
We talked about it's not about what you value, it's why you value it. It's
Yeah,
not about the number necessarily, it's about the path that gets you to it.
yeah,
And I do think, especially for people who are more numbers oriented, which I would guess tend to be the people who are more focused on goals,
hmm,
it's really hard to not hit that random arbitrary number
yeah,
and still call it a success.
right,
But that time was going to pass regardless. 6 months was going to pass no matter whether you were working towards benching 20 pounds more or not.
yeah,
So when you hit an improvement like that, we should recognize that as value added.
right. It's I had actually I've had two conversations with teenagers in the past couple of weeks. Well, I've had more than that, but two that come to mind. We have a lot of teenagers that we train, and
And oh man, do we train them.
yeah.
Oh,
One, the conversation was, I just asked how school was, and typical teenage answer, it's blah blah blah, whatever,
sure.
and I'm like, look, you got to be there 6 or 7 hours regardless,
Yep.
no matter what. That time is going to pass. What you do with that time is 100% on you. How you feel about that time, what energy and effort and whatever you put into that time, that's all you. You can't blame teachers, you can't blame other students, whatever. Your approach to it is 100% in your control. And that time was going to be there no matter what.
Yep.
And then the second one was we had a teen come in, and I could tell literally before she got past the doormat that it was not a good day for her.
She's got my kind of poker face.
Very, very, like, may as well have had a flashing neon sign with a marching band behind her. Like
I am not okay.
it was super obvious. And I didn't engage with that initially. I got her maybe 15, 20 minutes into the class just to see if she was going to pull herself out of it.
Sure.
And she didn't. And so I finally walked over and I'm like, look, what's going on? And she started to tell me some stuff. And I was like, look, stop. You got 45 minutes in this class to where you don't have to think about any of that stuff. That stuff will be waiting on you after this 45 minutes is up. But I know that you like being here. I know that you like being in this class. I know that you like partnering with these people. I know that you benefit from it. And right now, you're just hurting yourself by perseverating on these things that you really can't control and that aren't going to go away because your attitude sucks right now.
Did you say that? Yeah, you did. That's good. I'm gonna
Who are
take
you
this little clip
asking?
out and just repeat it over and over. Sometimes you
So,
just need to hear that.
yeah, I mean, it's true. And so if we talk about like goals and time passing and whatever, the time's going to go regardless, and we're not going to be redlining it the whole time. We're not going to be on 100% the whole time. That's not long-term sustainable. We've kind of hit those touch points in the past, but when I can push and when I have control of the variables, I want to do that. I want to push towards those things. And then I also want to recognize that when I can't, it's not a failure. It's not, well, it's just not even worth it.
Yeah.
If I'm 4 months into 6 months and I have a 1 week lapse, well, I'm not going to throw away the whole 4 months because that 1 week I didn't do the things that I said I was going to do. It's time to get back on track.
Well, and that's big in our industry because you're going to get sick at some point, more than likely. And
Sick,
it's
injured,
yeah. And it's
life.
much more beneficial to not come to the training center during that time. Stay home, rest, ice, PT work, whatever it is. And then when you're ready, when you can physically come back.
Yeah.
And you don't need to come back at 100%.
Right.
Come do a little bit here and there. And but yeah, don't throw away your entire progress because things didn't go according to plan.
Right.
It's time to move to second plan
Right.
A. That's why you've done the planning.
Again, it's the planning that's important. It's not the plan itself. Darren Hardy talks about big, hairy, audacious goals, and I think there's something to that when it comes to setting goals, setting things that I want to achieve, resolutions, whatever, and also being realistic about it at the same time. But I do think it's easier. I don't know if easier is the right word, but I do think there's value in aiming really, really high and understanding that I might not quite get there, but the journey of the attempt is going to be an improvement. It's
Yeah.
gonna make me better. Whereas if I'm always setting goals for myself that I know I'm gonna hit every time, am I really improving? Am I
Right.
really pushing myself? It's like
Right. We covered that.
the example I give all the time is, if you want to get better at playing basketball, stop playing 8-year-olds that you can just destroy.
Right.
You're going to have to place people that are going to push you to make you better.
Well, and in terms of aiming high, again, that's where you have to have the gap and gain mindset.
Hmm.
So if you're listening right now and you're thinking, okay, yeah, I'm going to set a big, hairy, audacious goal, but you don't have an understanding of gap and gain, and realizing that there is a way to look at things that is going to help encourage you
Yeah.
and keep you going and be optimistic. And then there's a way to look at things that are going to cause you to crash and burn.
Yeah.
So pre big, hairy, audacious goal, you start with the big, hairy, audacious goal of implementing a more gain forward mindset.
Right.
And gap and gain is from early episodes. It was in my notes for episodes 1, 2, and 3. I believe we got to talking about it in episode 2 or 3.
Yeah.
But all of those early episodes have a similar idea in terms of understanding, measuring how far you've improved rather than how far you have to go.
Right.
That mindset is important for improving.
Yeah. Well, I think identifying, and we've kind of touched on this before too, and this is part of Hard Ready as well. I think identifying people that are going to help you achieve these goals, and then also, and this is the hardest one, also people that are going to keep you from achieving these goals.
Mm,
And not just identifying them, but reducing or eliminating your exposure to them, you
that's
know?
good.
And it may not even be like nefarious, malicious intent, but to me it doesn't really matter. If I know
Right.
that there are people in my life that are constantly dragging me down and keeping me for achieving these big, hairy, audacious goals, listen, I never, ever, ever would have started this business if I had listened to the majority of people around me.
Yeah.
And again, I had a handful that were very supportive, and may have thought I was out of my freaking mind, but didn't show it, and said the things that I needed to hear.
That's something.
But most of them were like, you've lost your mind. And so I think if you can't, if you're not the kind of person that can take in that information and then process it in a way that you can recognize, look, this is not helpful to me, I'm just going to ignore it, then you may need to again eliminate or at least reduce your exposure to those people. And everybody has those people in your we've talked about the Eeyores, everybody has those people in your life that it's woe is me, or that everything is wrong and negative, and why are you doing that? The odds of success are blah. Listen, man,
That's episode 10, filter your feed.
I'm not. I've said this before. I bet on me.
Yeah.
I gamble very, very heavily on myself.
Right.
And if you're not here for that ride, that's fine. But don't expect me to invite you on the bus.
Uh-huh.
You know.
So in terms of, that's great that you put up. I have a list of, quick notes that I made on why resolutions
Yeah, and I've
tend
got a
to
couple
fail.
more
And
things.
I figured you did. And we've covered not having the planning, the action part of it, right? That's that magical thinking. You just say the thing. Maybe you write it down because you were told to write it down and you move on. Um, Not having the tools to implement the change, not having the right mindset, not understanding habit stacking so that you're setting a morning or an evening routine that you can stick to and follow through. Um, and with the tools, the mindset that we talked about, episode 8 was on taking ownership.
Yeah.
And if your mindset is such that things happen to you, things happen to me, I don't have any control over them, I don't have any responsibility, then achieving your goals is going to be difficult because things are going to happen to you throughout the
Right.
year. So again, I think a lot of goals fail because it's this idea that you say the thing and then you start trying to do the thing and it's going to happen. But if you don't have that resilience built in, then you're not going to reach those goals. And you need to start with building resilience as a goal,
Yeah.
which is a
Well,
lot harder.
it
It's
is.
not measurable, but it's part of what you need.
Yeah. Well, and I think another thing that is probably helpful is to pick one thing.
Yeah.
You know, when people tell me, "Yeah, man, I'm going to lose 20 pounds. I'm going to start jujitsu." I'm going to like, no, you're not.
Yeah.
Like because even if you have the best of intentions, we're talking about it's hard enough to develop new habits for one endeavor.
Yes.
Now we have to develop new habits for multiple endeavors. We have to figure out how to work those things into our schedules. We know that things are going to come up that are going to deter us. We know that there are going to be people around us that are going to be detractors. And if my attention is split between these 3 or 4 goals that I've set for myself at this arbitrary New Year's date,
Right.
because
Yeah. And that's my big problem with New Year
it
too.
is
Yeah.
that it's just we decided at some point, hey, new year, new me. No, fuck that. It's the same you, bro.
Yep.
Like you, there's nothing keeping you from doing this right now. There was nothing keeping you from doing this 3 months ago.
Yep.
But the marketing has told us that,
It's
and look,
got to be now.
it's awesome for our business because I know how to plan for,
Oh yeah.
you know, when things are going to be hot and heavy and when things are going to be a bit slower. But the reality is, it's not a new you. It's the same you. And when you come into it with a new you mindset, the problem is you haven't created new you habits.
Yes.
You just said, well, New Year's, new me, but you haven't done the work.
Well, and you will for sure be one of the people who have quit by February, which I believe those numbers are 87%. And I'm not sure the exact date or timeline, but 87% early because you went in
It's
hot and
inside of
heavy.
3 months. So there's been several gym studies that say inside of 3 months, people that join a new gym at the beginning of the year, 80%, 80+% quit.
You'll be earlier than that probably if you the people who come in
That's
hot and
for
heavy,
one goal.
Yeah. Yeah,
That's
yeah,
one
yeah.
new thing.
Yeah. Well, when you're trying to go lift and start jujitsu and eat better and plan your meals, and it's too much. Even if you're able to manage it for a few days, a few weeks,
Right.
even when you hit that first obstacle, that first road bump, you're gonna drop all of those plates.
Well, another thing is, and kind of touched on this, but not in this way. Let's say you New Year comes around and you've decided, look, I'm gonna get into shape. Now, first of all, getting into shape, that's not a goal. That means nothing. That's that's about as mushy, nebulous as it can possibly get.
Yep.
You need to be more specific than that.
Right.
You're going to get into shape. You're going to start kickboxing. You're going to walk X amount of miles per week. You're going to get up early. You're going to go to bed earlier. You're going to read X amount of books for whatever, blah, blah, blah. Who are the other significant people in your life? And have you had this conversation with them?
Hmm.
Because now all of a sudden, if you're really going to do all these things, I promise you it's going to take a lot of time and a lot of discipline and a lot of habit and a lot of change.
For you
And
and the people you live with, the people around you.
it has to. If you're going to change the way you eat, just forget all those other things that we just talked about. You're going to change the way you eat. Well, are the other people in your life going to be on board with this? And if not, how are you going to work that? How are you going to make that happen? Are you cooking multiple different ways? Whoever's cooking, are you cooking for the rest of the family and then cooking for you separately? Like there are real considerations to make here. And if you're going to compound that by coming up with 3 or 4 goals that you're going to try to accomplish in this first 3 or 4 months of the year, you should have started planning this 3 months ago.
Right. And I think that's where the idea of a New Year resolution really does a disservice to people because you can't just look at these things January 1 and then forget about them, and December 31st, check and see how you did.
Right.
This has to be something that you're checking in on regularly. Yeah. And I don't set New Year's resolutions in any kind of strict type of form. Some years I focus on it, some years I don't. But the more effective, and again, New Year, not even New Year's as in January 1st, but just at some point I look at my life and I say, okay, this is what I want to do. Here's my goal. And the more effective I am with it are ones where I'm checking in maybe once a month, once a quarter, to see, am I still on track? Does this track still make sense? Yeah. Is this still where I want to go with my time and energy and effort?
Right.
And a lot of times, you can't be afraid to scrap a goal. I wanted to climb V5s by this year. I wanted to be more comfortable with climbing them. And my shoulder got injured near the end of July, and I was looking at what my goals were, and I adjusted them because that just didn't make sense for me right now. I can't injure my shoulder, ruin my ability to work, affect my livelihood because I have this random goal that I set that I wanted to climb at this certain level.
Yeah. Well, that's the return on investment conversation.
Right.
When I first started this, the investment seemed worth it. The juice was worth the squeeze. 2 months in, 3 months in, I'm doing my regular check-ins. I'm doing I've created the habits. I've reached a certain place in this process, and I think it's not just okay, but healthy to reevaluate and make sure this is still something that I want to spend my time in. Not just because I said I was going to do it.
Yes, that's the big thing. Why? A lot of people lack a why. Well, I should be healthier. I'll lose 20 pounds.
Yeah.
Well, why? And is that really the right metric to choose?
What about lowering your blood pressure? Hey, I want to be more flexible. And I'm like, okay.
I'm always like, why?
Why? Like what? Like what is the actual goal? It's like you send me a text or you ask me a question. I'm like, okay, but what's the actual question?
I need that in my life.
what are you actually asking me?
Yeah.
And if you say, well, I want to be more flexible. Okay. Why? Because the number of people that come to us and they have a thing in mind that they think they want to do, they don't really know. Or do you want to be more flexible or do you want to be more mobile? Because they're not the same thing and we're not going to get to the same place. If you truly want to be more flexible for whatever reason, I don't know why, but then, okay, obviously that's something we can work towards, but we don't want to work towards the wrong thing. Let's make sure that you actually understand why you feel like you want to do this. It's no different than when people first come into the center. We ask them about their goals. Well, for me, when I'm having that conversation with somebody, I let them do as much talking as possible because eventually I will probably get to the place where I hear what it really is that they need or they want. And it won't be the first thing that they tell me.
No.
You got to get past the surface on those conversations.
To tie back what we've talked about with some of the things when we're talking to people, the more people give you a bunch of different reasons or answers, the more I know they're either not sure or they haven't actually gotten to the one.
Yeah.
And we see that a lot of time with people who leave the centers. And it's, they start with, well, traffic's gotten bad and it's too far and my job did this and the kids did that, and they're giving a ton of answers. Yeah. And it's like, okay, but there's something.
Most of those things existed when you joined.
Before, right. So there's something that's changed. Right. And maybe it is the traffic is really bad. It was a 30-minute drive and now it's a 45-minute drive, and that trade-off isn't worth your time, and that's understandable. But there's a thing.
Right.
And I would like to identify it so that, we actually know what the problem is, because it might be that you got elbowed in the face last week and you're put off by that. You don't want it to happen. So you've created all these other things, all these other issues, when that other one is easily addressable.
Yeah. And generally, when it comes to things like this, people avoid confrontation.
Yeah.
And uncomfortable conversations. And it's so much easier to just say, well, my kid's schedule changed or traffic has just gotten really bad or whatever, than, well, I don't really feel safe working with Michael, because then I've put a name and a face to it. And I've said, I'm not an adult enough to handle this.
Yeah.
And nobody wants to do that. Nobody wants to admit that. And two, generally we don't want to put ourselves in a situation, in a conversation where we have to say something that's uncomfortable,
Uncomfortable.
and so it's easier just to make up these other things. And look, when somebody's telling you about their goals, they may not want to, one, they may not really know why they want to lose 20 pounds, um, but also they may not want to admit why that is to themselves
Right.
even. And
Yeah.
so to verbalize it is difficult. You know, it's well, I want to lose 20 pounds because every time I look in the mirror, it, I'm depressed for the rest of the day or whatever. That's a hard thing to admit to yourself,
Yeah.
much less to tell somebody else,
I do think those types of things come around about a year later. When they got into it anyway, they did it. They start getting comfortable with you and understanding how you are helping their progress and, how you want to be supportive and encouraging. And they mention, hey, when I started, it was actually,
Right. The problem
XYZ.
is most people don't make it a year.
Well,
you know
yeah.
and so what everybody needs to understand is no matter what the new thing is that you're trying to do, it's going to take time, and you're going to have peaks and valleys throughout. Like, if it's anything worthwhile, that's just going to be the natural kind of progression of it. There's going to be ups and downs. There's going to be days you want to quit and whatever, and there's going to be days that you feel like you can lift your truck, and then there's going to be days that picking up your iPhone seems laborious. That's just the way that it is, especially when you're talking about physically challenging and emotionally challenging endeavors. I think with resolutions, having big goals, but realistic expectations. And then I do think there's something to picking new goals. people
So it's
that
the same thing
People
every
that
year.
repeat
Yeah.
every year, like, if it didn't work the last 3 years,
That's telling you something.
maybe let's look at something else, and maybe ultimately the result is the same or similar, but we need to approach it in a different way. Let's not say I want to lose 20 pounds. Let's say I want to decrease my body fat or by this percentage, or let's say I want to be able to run a mile in X amount of time, or I want to be able to bench this, squat this, deadlift this, and at the end of those 6 months, then the result may be that I lost
Right.
20 pounds or whatever, but I've already set a precedence for it. I think it's easier to quit on something that you've already failed on multiple
Multiple
times.
times. Yeah. Finding the right goal to set is definitely important. And that might be more connected with your why again.
Yeah.
Most people don't want to lose 20 pounds just to lose 20 pounds.
No.
There's something else. It's
Right.
because they can't play with their kid. It's because they can't sprint from gate A29 to C11.
Right.
They'll miss their flight. It'll take them an hour kind
Right.
of thing, So
It's because their doctor gave them some scary news about their blood pressure, or,
yeah.
whatever it is. But I think really drilling down and identifying those things are super important, no matter how uncomfortable it is. What is the real reason? Because if we don't have the real reason, it's hard to have a real plan.
Yeah. Well, and how do you think, and I'm asking to ask,
Mhm.
we talked about start with why and passion and purpose.
Mhm.
And we've also talked about going on retreats and how meditation is for everyone, therapy isn't for everyone. So how do
Mhm.
I actually dig down into why?
Yeah, I think that's where the support system is important.
And you
Having
have people
people
who
around
know
you,
you
yeah,
really well.
yeah, or at least people that know how to ask the right questions.
Mm, yeah.
you know and then, just on the other side of that, if you are the person asking the questions, let them answer. Let the other person talk more than you talk.
Yeah.
Ask open-ended questions. Give them an opportunity to expand upon it. Um, and a super easy trick is, you say, I want to lose 20 pounds because I want to lower my blood pressure. And I just say, oh, you want to lower your blood pressure. And then I just sit here and wait. I don't say anything else. I just say, oh, you want to lower your blood pressure. And then I just wait. I don't say anything else. And you will feel compelled to expand upon that,
Yeah.
you know? And then you say, yeah, my doctor said my blood pressure was a little high. I travel a good bit. I'm sitting on planes and things like that, and I don't get as much exercise as I want. Oh, so you don't get as much exercise as you think you need. I sit on that one. Let them expand some more. So I'm basically just saying back to them the last thing that they said to me.
And that's an active listening.
Yeah.
I don't want to say trick, but
Right. Well, it does let them know that
technique.
I'm listening. It lets
Yeah.
them know I'm paying
Yeah.
attention. But it also encourages them to expand upon the last thing that they said.
Right.
And it's a way for me to ask a question without continually asking questions.
You're great at that.
Yeah.
I mean, I know people who have pulled you for conversations, asked to grab lunch to talk about different things that you have no business necessarily talking about, but they know you
Right.
have a great perspective. You understand human function and mindset and thought processes, and you
Mm-hmm.
can use that type of inquiry question line to get them to the place they need to go.
Right.
And that's an incredible skill.
One of our members, I know this is what she's talking about. One of our members was giving graduation speech at
Sure
Duke
is.
University and asked to have dinner with me so he could ask me questions about the speech and things, give me the kind of the highlight bullet points that he wanted to touch on and get my perspective on it. Internally I'm thinking, bro, I didn't even graduate from college. Like, they wouldn't let me on Duke University campus. Like, but yeah, I do think when it comes to the question you asked, having people around you that know you, know how to ask the right questions, and are intentional about it, but then also really want to see you succeed. That's I think that's going to help you get to your why if you're struggling to do it on your own.
Until I met people who I realized really understood me and understood, oh, I need to engage with them and open up, and this is somebody worth these conversations with. I didn't really see. You don't know what you don't know kind of
Yep.
thing. Once once you looked at me and like threw a protein bar at me because you could tell I was getting hangry, I was like, oh, oh, I needed that. Like I needed you to recognize that in me and see that, because it was going to be another hour before I recognized it for myself.
Yep. Support systems, and I don't want to go back to the therapy conversation, but support systems in whatever form they take, I think are really, really important. We are not, as a species, meant to be solitary. We're just not. We are tribal herd kind of a species. We don't. I think we don't often think of ourselves that way. And you hear people say, "Well, he's kind of a lone wolf," blah blah blah, whatever. There's probably some trauma there that has driven somebody to that point, but really, most people are not truly solitary. We're mostly
No,
gregarious by nature.
and not self-made, and yeah.
Oh yeah,
Are you calling yourself gregarious by nature
no.
or traumatized?
I'm gonna go with yes.
Fair.
I like my people.
Yeah.
And I mean, the reality is the vast majority of us, that's the way we are. You gravitate toward, look, you go into any group training environment, and no matter how diverse your room is, if you have a room full of newer people, they will gravitate towards people that look like them.
Yep.
You know,
Yeah.
it takes time to develop a new tribe. In 6 months, those same people may be less inclined to base who they partner with just on how everybody
Appearance and
looks,
size. Yeah.
But initially, that's what we have to go on. Like, people can say whatever they want, but profiling works.
Right.
There's a reason that profiling exists, and we all profile. And if I'm stuck into a room of people I don't know anything about, I have to base it on what I can see, you know. And I'm going to be more inclined to go hang out with somebody that's closer to my age, or somebody that's my race, or what, especially if you haven't grown up in diverse environments. Um, it's the middle school dance mentality.
Yeah.
you know.
And it's totally okay to find comfort within discomfort.
Yeah.
Yes, you're in this group based, whatever it is. I
Right.
I came to a social networking thing here recently, and honestly, it's been a little bit too long, I think, since I've done that because I was out of my element and I really wanted to just hug a wall and
Yeah.
just,
You needed me,
count down
right?
my time. Yeah, I definitely needed you. Uh, you would have
I had to
broken the
cover the
ice.
front desk last night for, I don't know, 30
30
minutes.
minutes.
Very, very little. And I'm standing up there with a arnie stick in my hand.
It was foam at least. Desperate times, guys. Desperate times.
No,
Yeah. But to say, I'm already doing an uncomfortable thing. When I find someone who I think, okay, I could have a conversation with this person
yeah,
because I can at least relate on this surface level that I'm looking at right
right.
now. You look close to my age, so you're not going to be talking about your retirement plan or whatever.
Yes.
There's some comfort in that, so
Right.
I can wade through these waters.
Yeah. I Again, we are tribal by nature. And in an environment like that, if you're going to identify your tribe, it's going to be initially based on sight.
Yes,
You
it has to
know,
be.
like, I mean, that just is what it is. And it's going to take me some time before I actually know these people and am comfortable getting outside of my visual tribe. And I think that's important. I think having that as a way that, because otherwise, we talked about this before. Let's say all of my marketing uses photos of super fit, super athletic people. They are all 5'8" to 6'2". They are all ripped to shreds. They are all blonde and beautiful and whatever. And I'm not those things. And I look at this marketing and I'm like, I don't,
That's not for me.
yeah, that,
Or I have to be a different person first. I have to get in shape. I have to
yeah.
somehow grow taller and
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. And so if the extension of that is I come into a place and I look around, I'm like, there is nobody here that looks like me. I'm already doing something that's uncomfortable to begin with, and now it's just even more uncomfortable. But then I do see somebody that looks like me and I'm like, sweet. And I may be more inclined to stay and stick around. And then once if it's a good fit, if it's a good culture, if it's a good environment, then I am more inclined to stay and get to know the other people that at least on the surface don't seem like my people.
Right. We're drawing heavily from episode 4, which was embracing discomfort, the power of doing hard things. And it's hands down our most popular episode. Episode 1 has a lot of views, I think, just because it's the first episode. And then right underneath it is episode
Which is
4.
unfortunate because I sucked so bad in that episode.
On that note, if you have not listened to episode 1, it's going to, we are sunsetting that episode. So get your listens in because it is going to be gone.
It's going away.
Great content, rough delivery.
Yeah, I was horrible. I'm not saying I'm good now, but I was really, really bad then.
We definitely have learned and progressed and developed. Yeah. So the topic will come back, but if you want to see us stumble and fumble our way through the first episode, make sure you go do that before it's gone.
She says us, but it really wasn't us. It was me. She was fine.
I felt pretty good about it.
I was horrible.
So I wanted to read a quote from episode 4, and it was a commencement speech, since that ties in as well, by a surgeon, Dr. Atul Gawande. I believe we got to this in the episode. Go back and check, though, viewers at home. This was in 2012. A failure often does not have to be a failure at all. However, you have to be ready for it. Will you admit when things go wrong? Will you take steps to set them right? Because the difference between triumph and defeat, you'll find, isn't about willingness to take risks. It's about mastery of rescue. Yes, you're taking risks, but you are ready for them. You're ready for things to go poorly, and you are ready to take back, keep going, take ownership of what happened and move on. And again, something is going to hinder you.
Yeah.
If you just set this goal and you think it's going to be a straight line, point A to point B, of course you're going to fail. You don't have the right mindset in place.
Right.
But you are going to fail no matter when you started, no matter how much planning you put in. If at some point that was your goal and you thought you were going to go to point A to point B, there was going to be failure within that. And the sooner we get started on those goals and reach that failure and start again, the sooner we start training ourselves and teaching ourselves that you can recover.
It's the second plan A mentality.
Yeah.
And that's why when people are like, hey, what's your 5-year plan or whatever? I'm like, bro, I barely have a 5-minute plan. Like, what are we, Soviets? Like,
I talked to my mom yesterday and she said, "Is it too early to know what's happening for Christmas?" I was like, I have a vague idea, but yeah, that's a 2-day out thing."
yeah, like, and I mean, and I understand a lot of this is just personality types.
Yeah.
I don't like to be hindered by,
Plans.
yeah, like, I'm here for the planning,
Yeah.
but what I have experienced is people that are planners have a hard time deviating. They struggle with second plan A.
He's not adding me, but he's adding me.
Yeah.
But that's why we're a great duality, dichotomy of sorts. I I like to have an idea of what it's going to look like when we go to Boone for the weekend or whatever it
Yeah.
is, and then when it doesn't go that way or it doesn't make sense to go that way despite me kicking and screaming, you're dragging me like, "No, this is the next way we need to
Yeah.
do it."
Yeah. I literally, and it probably doesn't seem like I'm this kind of person on the surface, but I am such a fluid, let's, this is the circumstances we're in, let's roll with it kind of like, I don't stress about, this isn't the way it was supposed to go or supposed to be or whatever. I mean, I always have a general idea about what's going on, but
Yeah.
I am so not the bullet point, let's outline this mf'er, and um I'm not Clark W. Griswold in vacation, and we have to be here at a certain time, and we've got X amount of minutes that we can visit this thing, and then we're moving on to the next thing, because especially like in that context, it's somewhere I've never been before. I don't know how long I want to stay there.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
I want to have the flexibility to adjust in real time, and I think that when you talk about resolutions, when you talk about goals, that is really really important, because if you don't have that kind of mindset and mentality, the first time something goes wrong, something goes sideways, are more inclined to just say F it. This isn't worth it. I'm not doing it. I've failed. I effed this up. This isn't working. Whatever. And I think you're much more likely to just abandon it altogether. And I think that's probably a huge reason that a lot of resolutions, or most resolutions, don't work.
There's a mindset to an internal dialogue that goes with that as well, I think. And for me, I don't know for me, but comparison can often stifle those resolutions as well. If you're putting so much energy and focus into eating well and exercising, and then you see someone who looks like your ideal body type or whatever it is, and they're scarfing down a pizza, your thought process, how you craft that narrative in your mind can make or break you.
Yeah.
She looks like that and she's eating the way she
Right.
wants. Screw it.
Right.
Rather than, you know what? She probably works out twice a week most days
Yeah.
and, eats super healthy, and this is the one day of the week she doesn't, or this is her one meal that she's
But
not.
regardless, it doesn't matter.
And also it doesn't matter.
She
Yeah.
might eat like that all day, every day, and not work out a bit. But she also might be 22 years old.
Yeah.
Like you can get away with a whole lot when you're younger.
I often think about the kids I saw walking through the dorm hallways with Mountain Dew and a Snickers bar for their breakfast and wonder where they are now.
Hmm. End of the day, I understand why we want to compare, and contrast with the people that we interact with or see in our lives or whatever. But the comparison is the thief of joy quote is so spot on. As soon as you start going down that hole, as soon as you start focusing on and concerning yourself with what other people have, what other people are doing, how other people are moving through life, then it's no longer about what you're doing, and that's the only thing you
You
have
can
any control
control.
over. and
Yeah.
and that kind of a mindset, that kind of a mentality is almost a guaranteed way to stifle any sort of measurable, attainable success. If it's constantly me just looking at what's going on around me instead of what's going on inside of me, I, I'm constantly going to be chasing things and then quitting on things and never seeing any sort of fruit bear from what it is that I'm trying to actually achieve.
When I was doing my research, one of the things I tried to do was find successful business people, whatever, and if what their thoughts are on New Year's resolutions. And it's possible that I didn't dig deep enough. I didn't see anything regular, like readily available. And I went to Success Magazine, and it didn't quite,
Hmm.
the online edition, obviously, and it didn't quite pan out. But I am curious where high achievers land on the spectrum.
Yeah.
But I have some beliefs about it
Yeah.
where if you want to be the kind of person that can set a goal and achieve it, you do it more than once a year.
Right. I was going to say they're probably
They
constantly
are
doing it
constantly setting goals, and
and reevaluating
and
them.
yeah, and that's not limited to just high achievers, people who are in top spots. If next year, and by next year I mean in 2026, you want to be able to set your SMART goal, the
Hmm.
acronym SMART,
Hmm.
and follow the conventions for setting a good goal and actually achieve it, you should spend this year learning how to set little tiny goals and achieve them.
Yeah.
Maybe it's each month, setting a goal of writing 4 thank you cards,
Yeah.
and you do that for a couple months and you hit it and you mark it off, and then the next, so you're practicing with these little goals that are relatively easy to attain, but are helping you set some type of standard for how this works.
Yeah.
It's If you build an entire house but you forget the electrical,
Yeah.
you're in trouble. You're not going to be able to say you built this house. It's not going to work. It's not going to function, at least not the way you were intending.
Right. Well, I mean, you're learning to build habits. You're learning to instill some discipline. You're setting a precedence for success. You're setting a precedence, hopefully, for uh, navigating when you're not successful.
Yeah.
Uh, Especially if the goals are relatively attainable.
Mhm.
It's easier to navigate when something doesn't quite go the way you want it to go.
Right.
And so if you establish a precedence for success on these smaller things, then long term that should translate to bigger goals. It
start
should
with
make it
the
easier at least.
start with the stakes being lower, the
Yeah.
resistance being lower, right? Because we talked about when things really matter, that resistance is high,
Yeah.
and being able to get through that is difficult. So we start with those lower caliber things,
Yep.
which is how we handle anything.
Right.
You learn letters before you learn words, before you start reading paragraphs, and so on.
Hmm.
So I got this idea, this story from How I Met Your Mother. I'll be honest, the show, and the main actor, the main character, Ted, is an architect, and he talks about this story of an architect who designed a library, did everything right, it was built, all those things, but he forgot to take into account the weight of the books. And so little by little, the library began to sink because the foundation couldn't handle the total weight.
Hmm.
And I don't know if it's a real story or not. I think it does have some factual roots to it. But if you're not taking into account the weight of the books,
Right.
it almost doesn't matter what your goal is, what you set.
Yeah. It doesn't matter.
It doesn't. Yeah.
Like that's literally the function of the building,
Right. Yeah.
right?
Right.
It's like if I'm going to build a car and it looks like a car, it smells like a car, it feels like a car, but it has no engine,
Hmm.
it can't perform the thing that it's designed to do. And so, yeah, it's
That's it. If you're setting goals and failing, it's you're trying to do something that you are not designed to do. We
yeah,
have to work on that design first.
yeah, yeah. Do you have an engine? And if not, you know, let's work on that. Just setting goals for the sake of setting goals that's useless. It's futile.
And it's mostly society driven because you're supposed to set goals at the beginning of the year or whatever it is.
Right. And I think a lot of times the goals themselves are society driven. Well,
Yes.
I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna set this goal because that's what everybody around me is doing. Again, who
No.
cares? I don't care. I shouldn't say I don't care what everybody around me is doing, but for the most part, I don't care what everybody around me is doing. If it doesn't directly affect me in some way and I can't directly affect it, then I don't care. It's wasted energy.
I agree.
It
And
just,
so to kind of relate it into it, in to relate this back to some of the things we've talked about, if you're a morning workout person, you work out in the mornings and you do it regularly and it's a habit, it's the thing you do.
yeah.
If you don't want to be a morning workout person, or if you're not a morning workout person, if you do not function well in the mornings and you're trying to force yourself into it and you're going once, maybe twice a week, and you're waking up early and actually getting there, it's probably just not going to work for you. If
Yeah.
you really want to be a morning person, that's an everyday kind of thing that you're
Yeah.
going to have to set yourself
Well,
to.
and I think like I'm not a morning workout person or an evening workout person or a midday workout person or anything like that. I work out every day. But what I know is if I don't work out in the morning, the odds of me getting a workout in later in the day are greatly diminished because once life starts to take over, it is much more difficult. So it's the eat the frog first thing in the morning kind of thing. So even if you're not a morning person or you're not an evening person or you're not a whatever, if you're not a morning person and you'd rather work out in the afternoon, but working out in the afternoon doesn't seem
Never
to
happens.
happen because of all the then you have to start saying, okay, well, how much is working out actually worth it to me? Because if it's really worth it, if whatever goal you set is really worth it to you, then you'll figure out how to do that workout in the morning, no matter how
Yes.
much you hate it. And if you need to get somebody to go work out with you, or you need to listen to CT Fletcher while you're there, or whatever it is, David Goggins. I don't know what gets people going. I listen to true crime. I don't need anybody yelling at me. Um, so sometimes I listen to music, but normally I'm listening to true crime.
Sounds like a cult fueled me
What,
this morning.
whatever it is that gets you going. But if the goal is truly worth it,
Yes.
you will find a way. Don't tell me you don't have time. Bullshit.
Yeah.
The number of people that have told me, "Well, I just don't have time to work out." That's a lie. I don't care. I don't. We all have the same amount of time in a day, and I understand that some people are busier than others. Totally get that. Then you get up 15 minutes earlier. 15 minutes. You don't have to go anywhere.
Nope.
Do push-ups, do squats, do sit-ups, do whatever.
Yep.
Hit that Tabata interval,
Yep.
and you can do 4 exercises, 20 on, 10 off, 8 rounds each exercise. That's a 16-minute workout, including the rest time. Don't tell me you don't have time.
Yep. Big
And
fan of Tabata intervals.
and by the way, if you don't feel like you got to work out from that, then that's on you. You just didn't work hard enough.
True.
If you did nothing but jumping jacks for that entire Tabata workout, you should be smoked if you actually put in energy and effort. Period.
Yeah.
Full stop. Don't tell me you didn't get a good workout. That's on you.
So now take that for your resolutions. And it's important to realize if you're not doing it, if you're not finding the time, if you're not making the time, then maybe that's not actually your goal.
Yeah.
For me,
maybe it's not really that important to you.
Right. I spent 3 years after undergraduate telling myself I was going to apply to graduate schools. And I kept not doing it and kept not doing it. And deadlines came and passed. And finally I realized, you know what? I don't really want to go. I just thought this was a step I should take.
Right.
And I'm going to stop trying to force this down my throat and actually focus on what I do want to do with my life.
Yeah. Yep. Again, that comes back to your why.
Right.
If you figure out your why, then you can save a lot of this heartache. Why do I want this? Is it because I just think that this is what I'm supposed to do? Well, if that's true, then you don't really want it. And so the odds of success go way down. They're greatly diminished because it's not something that you actually put value on. If you don't put value on it, it's like when we offer free classes. If people don't put value on a thing, they are much less likely to do it. Well, if it's a free class, how good can it be? That's how people, that's the mindset that people have. And so if you're not putting value on whatever this goal is that you've set for yourself, then the odds of you being successful at it are pretty much nothing.
Value and why were some of our biggest things within this episode, I think.
Yeah.
If you had to start narrowing it down.
Yeah. Value, why, have a good support system, get rid of the people that aren't part of that.
That's a tough one.
It is. But again, if we want to talk about growth and discomfort, if you have people around you, and this would be true in personal relationships, in working environments, whatever, if there are people in your environment on a day-to-day basis that are keeping you from being the best you can be, they got to go just the way it is. Or you acknowledge, I'm not willing to let this person go. So the things that I want to do, the things that I've said are important to me, they're really not that important to you.
I'm going to let that be the last line.
Sweet.
The last comment of 2024, in fact.
Mm.
because we will not have an episode next week. Wednesday is Christmas. And then our first episode of season 2 in the new year, 2025, will drop January 1st. That's the Wednesday. From there, we'll be moving to posting every other week, at least for a little while. We want some time to really, again, build this community the way we need to, start making it a fruitful endeavor to where we are reaching more of the people that we want to reach, building our community. I'm also we're building up the website as well to have more resources so that you can look back, grab clips, different things that you need, get books referenced. There's already a couple episodes up, but we just need a little bit more time to build that out. So
Sweet.
we will be moving to every other week. And that's our look at the New Year dilemma. By the way, I included a false dichotomy. It's not resolved or resigned, obviously, as you should know by the end of this podcast, but sounded cool.
No, I like it. All right. Thanks, everybody. Enjoy your holidays. Be safe out there. And I guess we will speak in the new year.
Yeah. Come check us out in 2025. Thank you, everyone. If you enjoyed this podcast, again, subscribe, share, follow, join the conversation on social media. If you didn't enjoy it, that's on you.